Good evening, everyone. I want to welcome everyone to tonight's regularly scheduled meeting. Quiet down in the back. We'll start with Mr. Caldwell, if he'll do the Pledge of Allegiance for us.
Attention. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Ms. Crawford, if you would read the mission statement, please.
Okay. The mission of Clay County Schools is to build high-quality learning environments that ensure all students learn at high levels.
And the one announcement that we have is our next regular meeting will be July 24th at 6 o'clock here in the boardroom. And I did want to note, obviously, Mr. Jones is not here this evening. He's helping with the FBLA competition in Atlanta, so he couldn't be with us this evening. So just wanted to make note of that. You have the agenda in front of you, and it has been emailed to you as well, so I entertain a motion that we approve the agenda as it's presented.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Ms. Crawford, is there a second? Mr. Caldwell, second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Next, we have public comment.
Mr. Chair, there's no one signed up.
Okay. So we'll move on to recognitions, and we'll start with Clay County Schools and educational attainment changes.
Thank you, Dr. Shook. Just very quickly, we received notification last week, and I wanted to share this with the board and with the public. You may recall that 3.5 years ago, the board entered into a memorandum of understanding with a statewide nonprofit called My Future NC. This nonprofit was started with seed money from the North Carolina General Assembly, that time several years ago, with the goal of creating or increasing the number of North Carolina citizens that hold a post-secondary degree or nationally recognized job certification by 2 million by the year 2030. And the reason why is because their research showed through the census that the way North Carolina's economy is growing and the type of jobs that are being created in North Carolina, they pretty much all require either a 2-year degree, a 4-year degree, or a nationally recognized job certification. And that we didn't currently have the citizens with these certifications necessary to fill the jobs that are going to open by 2030. So almost every school district in the state of North Carolina entered into an MOU with My Future NC to help them with their goal of increasing the number of North Carolina citizens that hold these certifications. I guess, pushed us through our work with the school board in finding new ways to open up opportunities for our students to take college courses during high school paid for by North Carolina citizens at Tri-County Community College. As well as going through a revamp of our CTE program to ensure that all of our CTE pathways ended with a nationally recognized job certification exam that our students could take, and really requiring our students to take those and pushing them a lot harder. As a result of that work, we received notification last week that out of all 115 school districts in the state of North Carolina, Clay County increased its population of citizens who have a post-secondary degree or nationally recognized job certification by 15.34%, which was the highest growth over the last 3.5 years in North Carolina of all 115 counties. The state average was 3.5% of growth in that. So Clay County has outperformed the state by almost 5 times in growing the number of citizens in Clay County that have these credentials. And I think that's a testament to the work of our CTE teachers, of Ravonda Palmer, our CTE director, our school counselors for really working with our students and encouraging them to take CTE classes and study for those job certification exams, and also with our partners at Tri-County and the counselors and the principals in identifying students who we feel like are very capable of doing well on Tri-County classes and encouraging them to take college classes, and for our students for achieving them and our parents supporting that work. So I just wanted to share that. Number 2 in the state was Dare County at 10%, and number 3 was Avery County at 9.2%. So we've done a lot of great work in that area, and hopefully that's going to help Clay County citizens have a lot more access to these jobs in the future. Thank you.
That's awesome. Very good. Ms. Owens, our Teachers of the Year.
Yes, and I'm going to speak for Heather Clemens tonight because she is on vacation. So I'm going to start with the Educator of Excellence, Miss Kelly Rogers, if you'll come on up. Miss Kelly Rogers Gibby. So Kelly is our EC, or Exceptional Children's Educator of Excellence for the district. Kelly will represent Clay County with all the districts across the state at our state convention. This was an award that she was chosen for by her colleagues and the administrators. Everybody involved with EC votes on this. And Kelly has been exceptional. Kelly started in our preschool program. When my baby was a baby, and she's 30 now. So Kelly's just been an instrumental partner of district. She's a speech therapist. She works with children not only in speech therapy, though. She loves our babies. She loves all of our kids, and she works off campus in our daycares. She works in our private school when that's needed, and she's all over campus. So she's very well deserving of this award, and I want to congratulate you for that. And we have your plaque since you weren't here the other night. So let's we take a picture since we didn't get one the other night.
Yes.
Your work, you know. Thank you. Thank you. Rosemary, will you come on up? Rosemary is our Teacher Assistant of the Year at Hazel Primary School. She is also another member of our EC department. She started in Gen Ed here 2 years ago, correct? And this past year, she decided when we had a vacancy in the EC department, she asked, she inquired about it, and she said, I just really feel like that's a place I would like to work. And Heather's discussion and sharing with us about you crawling under the coat rack with the little boy that was in distress that day, it just speaks to the type of work and commitment she has to the students of Clay County and at Hazel Primary School. And she's been a great asset since she came to our department and our schools. Thank you. We really appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, nice.
All right, Miss Staten. Kimmy Staten is a kindergarten teacher at Hazel Primary School, and you've been there how many years now?
This was 17.
In kindergarten. So that in itself is a miracle. But you love kindergarten.
I love kindergarten.
She loves her kids. She's had some of my own family members in her classroom, and they love her truly. Kimmy, anytime you hear about kindergarten, you hear about Kimmy and her commitment to the children, and I feel like she is one of the greatest assets at our primary school, as all our teachers are, but you really stand out and shine. Teacher of the Year is voted on by the colleagues within each school, and this year Miss Kimmy was selected. So, thank you.
You got it. Is it good? Is it good?
That's okay, you're talking next.
We did it. Okay. Thanks.
Well, it is my great pleasure to introduce to you Miss Casey Ledford. Come on up. I could talk for a long time about Casey Ledford and what she means to us at Hayesville Elementary. There are many things I could say about her, but she is one of our exceptional children's teachers, and I think it speaks volumes about her work that someone in a support role was voted as our Teacher of the Year, and she is always more than willing to go out of her way to support those kids, to support those teachers when we have kids with unique learning needs. She goes out of her way to support them. She's also our PBIS chair and has done wonders with implementing that and advancing it in Hayesville Elementary. I also affectionately refer to her as our shenanigans coordinator because She truly has a heart for culture of our school, and not just for teachers, but also for the students. You know, she wants to make sure that our teachers are taken care of, that our teachers have a fun place to come to work, and a place that they enjoy being, but the same for our students. And so I am delighted to have her in our building, and just couldn't be happier for her to represent our school.
Thank you.
No, I floated a trailer.
Y'all step up a little closer to the.
Come here. So our teacher of the year, of course, is Miss Tammy Dills. And if there's three things that I want to say about Tammy, and I missed some of this the other night whenever I talked. But as a teacher, Tammy is exceptional. She uses her PE platform to build relationships with kids that are long-lasting, waiting time, like after they leave her. And they love her continuously and keep in touch with her. Secondly, as a coach, she always pushes her students and her athletes to be their best in the classroom and outside of the classroom, on the field and off the field, or court, whichever. And last, as an AD, she takes all that off my plate, and seriously, and she fundraises the best of anybody that I know. She makes sure that middle school athletes don't do without anything, or have to go without anything, or not go somewhere. So I'm blessed to have her. I feel very blessed to have you. And even if you don't get anything greater, I love you when I'm appreciative.
I was pulling my roles here.
Come on up here.
Good
evening, everybody. Hayesville High School's Teacher of the Year is Ellen Engelman. Ellen is our visual art teacher. If you've ever been to one of our art shows in the high school, you can tell right away the impact that Ellen is having on our school and on our students. She meets students where they're at talent-wise. She's not picky about who starts with her, but no matter what their talent is, Ellen can grow them into better artists. And that's what I really appreciate. The other thing I appreciate about Ellen is that every time I've ever gone into her classroom, I see students creating art. Okay? They're not writing reports about art. They're not researching art on their Chromebook. They're not watching a PowerPoint presentation about art. They are creating art. And I think that's really important to acknowledge. We're fortunate to have Ellen. Congratulations on Hayesville High School Teacher of the Year.
Thank you.
So, actually a couple weeks ago, 9 days ago, we were actually supposed to have our interviews for the District Teacher of the Year. The person selected for the District Teacher of the Year will go on to compete for the Western Regional Teacher of the Year from the 4 School Teachers of the Year. Unfortunately, that day we had a couple people sick and another person out of town, so we had to postpone the interviews until today. And I apologize to the 4 that interviewed today that you had to wait that long. But we did conclude today, and it was a very hard decision. There were some tears, there was some laughter during those interviews. The compassion that came out during those interviews from all 4 participants was just immense. I cried, the committee members cried, and it was just great to hear the love of students and staff in the school culture during those interviews. And I want to thank you for participating today and taking time out today to work with us on those interviews. I do not have the plaque because the company, it takes 24 hours to do that, so the plaque won't be ready till next week. But I do have flowers. So this year's, the 23-24 Clay County Schools District Teacher of the Year is Miss Kimmy Staten. Shake your hand and we'll get a picture with you.
It's up to you, thank you.
No. Oh my gosh.
Picture.
I'm sorry, picture. I get a little nervous. It's okay. Can I just set these here? Or can I get back there? I feel really weird. I feel really weird, like. I'm just gonna get in the middle. Is that okay? Can I just set my flowers right here with y'all?
There
Is
you
that
go.
good? Is that good? Okay.
Just take over. Go ahead.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you all. Congratulations to all of you ladies. So we appreciate what you do on behalf of the board. So thank y'all. Next, we have our report section. We have the intermediate school design progress. Mr. Jonathan Capp from LS3P is going to give us an update.
Thank you. Appreciate the chance to be here in front of this group. So we presented to the building committee at the end of April. What we presented was a schematic design that was approved. It met, the needs that matched the program, met the needs, and also we presented a cost estimate. And so that's kind of the big reason to update you guys today is that construction costs have continued to be, just very unpredictable over the last 2 or 3 years. So our cost estimate was quite a bit higher than our conceptual estimate. And I think if we can go in let's go in one slide here. Thank you. I think it's good to go back and revisit why are we doing this? Why are we making this big investment? And there are buildings that aren't adequate for your current educational needs. There are buildings that can't really be renovated or added to. There's just not enough room. It doesn't make any financial sense, or there's abatement issues in them. There are buildings that have really heavy maintenance needs and have really upcoming necessary repairs. And if you look at the list, there are a bunch of buildings that are on all 3 of those lists, and all the buildings that we're talking about replacing are on at least 2 of those lists. So I think the need is really there. So I want to keep that in mind as we discuss the money a little bit. If you can go forward a slide. This is the design that we came up with. This is the site design. Really fits the programs well for the 3rd through 6th graders and the 3rd through 5th graders and 6th through 8th graders. The next slide will show the floor plan, and this is sort of just the statistics of the building. It's a sprinklered, it's non-combustible. We don't have any basement spaces that we're constructing, which is always good in a wet climate. So the total square footage was 113,000 and change, with 2 wings for the elementary school and the middle school, and the services that serve the whole campus. Most of the whole campus. We've got an auditorium that's going to be used K through 12, well, really preschool through 12, and then we've got a cafeteria and a kitchen that's going to serve 3 through 12, and the freezers and the storage serves everybody, serves K through 12. So, all important stuff. And if you go to the next slide, we'll look at our cost estimate. I know it's small print, but that gold scope is the full scope, and it came our budget for that was with owner cost was $62 million, which is $22 million more than our grant. So that's when we said, okay, what do we need to do to give ourselves a viable path forward? And really the viable path forward was to take a big chunk of square footage out of the building to give us some flexibility. Now, at the bottom of this slide, you can see cost estimates have ranged all over the place, $270 a square foot to $426 a square foot. Our project was the $426 a square foot. So we were the highest one that we saw, pricing, bidding, any of that. So the average was $344, almost $80 square foot cheaper. So some of that is to say we're kind of planning for worst case scenario here, which means I think we'll have a viable project if it comes in at this higher cost. That's our goal. Our hope is, and we'll plan and build and design for this, is that we get to do the whole thing. If it comes in somewhere around the average, we're in really good shape. So if we can go to the next slide. There is a DPI understands the situation that's gone on, the grant cycle, the grants were applied for a little while ago, then the grant cycle took a long time, and in the meantime there's been a lot of inflation. So their DPI is planning on issuing additional money, $10 million grants. I will say that is contingent upon, of course, the North Carolina State Legislature. So July 4th was the legislature's deadline. I don't know if they'll make it, they don't always, whatever. We just have to wait and see. But the process, assuming the money is in that budget, which it has been planned in the budget, by the time they approve it, we'll need to look at applying for that extra $10 million in August. So that was all the updates I could get in the last couple weeks. We're just waiting on the legislature. So next slide. Skip this one and the next one. Just keeping it short. Okay, thank you. So like I said, we have to take a big chunk of square footage out if we want to build something viable, and we're replacing the auditorium, we have to replace the cafeteria, and our grant is for a middle school building, so we really have to replace the middle school. So this is one layout where we would leave the space for the elementary school wing to be added on in the future. If you go to the next slide, we're also going to get priced. So we'll do some more pricing at the end of August, and we'll present it to you guys in September. So if you can see, we'll have a couple different options, and this is a 5th through 8th grade school. And this is kind of the ideal as far as the site design and the things that we can demolish and get rid of campus. This would be ideal. This would help us get rid of the pod buildings. We can move all the uses out of the pod buildings if we can build the 5th through 8th grade wing. And that would give us a lot of space for our bus slots and all that stuff. So that we'll assess when we kind of get a menu of what we get from our cost estimate. We'll be able to pick how we design going forward through the rest of the design. Next slide. I tried to do a big graphic so I didn't have to read it. This is kind of the project schedule. We are here at the end of June. We'll get a chance to review where we are in July. We'll probably do the DPI grant proposal within the summer. There'll be another set of owner review at the end of August. We'll have DPI review again, and then we'll have our cost tested information. After we present all that, we'll move into construction documents where we probably won't do as much communicating with you because it'll be really nitty-gritty. We'll do what we need to, but most of our decisions are going to be made over the next 2 months. And we'll just get to the work of drawing the building for the contractor. So far we've been drawing it for you guys. In the last 4 months, we'll be drawing it for the people who will build it. The dark, we'll finish those CDs before Christmas. There's almost no point in hurrying to bid things at that time of year. Nobody will work on it over Christmas. The contractors just won't do it. So we'll start bidding and negotiation in January. That's an unpredictable process. Sometimes it can take a month. Sometimes it can take 2.5. But so we've given ourselves about 2 months for bidding and negotiation, and then construction would start in next spring. There's a pretty good amount of work that can get done without really getting in your guys' way for those last couple months of the school year, and then they'll in earnest begin demolishing things and starting foundations for the new building once summer starts. We anticipate that you would be in occupying the new school building by the time the next school year started. So you'd build through one entire school year and 2 summers. So by the summer of 2025, you would be in the new school building. And then there's demolition that has to happen after that. So that would be the middle school building and the cafeteria get demolished after the new building is occupied. And then there's quite a bit of parking lot work. And so it could, we've said we could go through the next summer. It could happen faster. That'll be something we talk to general contractors about to confirm. But sometimes when the paving companies shut down in the winter, it makes everything a lot slower. So that's the anticipated schedule for the rest of the project. And I think that's it, what we have. I have a couple of project images that we can show as well if there aren't any questions. They're small on these screens, but the general building looks like this, and then we've got another set of interiors that we've shown you guys. The building committee has seen before some of our interior concepts.
So Jonathan, just make sure the cost estimates are from just cost estimators in general so far.
Yes.
And then it'll go out to bid to the contractors, and then if that bid comes in, obviously much lower than that, would you say 426? Then we can start adding things back in. That's the
yes.
the hope.
So
Is that
we'll get another cost estimate, and the cost estimating firm we've been using is also a contractor. They've been a partner of LS3P on other projects for a long time. So Scott and I are new working with them, and
They do construction.
They do construction. Yeah. So so we'll get another cost estimate at the end of September. We'll present it to you. And that will affect kind of how we say what is our base bid. So the idea of a base bid and an alternate is the base bid is the bare minimum. Well, so for now we're considering the base bid to be the hub and the 3 through 8th grade wing. Okay.
6 through 8.
6 through 8th grade wing. It may be that when we get our cost information back, and what we know that some things are going down, steel's been going down, other prices have been going down, labor continues to be a real issue, so I hesitate to predict what's going to happen then. But we'll have a cost estimate at that point, and we may be able to adjust what our base bid is. We may add in the 5th grade wing and say our base bid is 5th grade through 8th grade. I'm hopeful that we'll get to do that. But when bid day comes, we will give those choices to we can have the general contractors can bid those alternates as well. So we don't have to get rid of all those when it's bid day. They will give us sort of a menu a la carte price. Right. It costs $10 million more to build this portion. It costs $5 million to build this portion. So that way you'll get to pick what you want on bid day. And we'll probably work in some more alternates that could be materials for flooring materials. There'll be more alternates than just those big ones. There'll be probably some. There could be some owner, like if we only want. I'm trying to remember what we like. Train units. We'll have to have an alternate for picking train units, and all the HVAC folks will bid on train units because they know you want it, but we still have to call it an alternate. So. Does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll also refresh the cost estimate during our construction documents phase. So sometime in November, we'll probably get it refreshed and just updated at that point. Yeah.
Any other questions?
I don't have any at this time.
I just want to reiterate that the goal is to build a 3 through 8 school with the auditorium and cafeteria. Right now, the estimators that LS3P work with, they've estimated that to be $63 million. We're not going to be able to do that if that's what it ends up costing. So then you have to be prepared. What can you build? And I would like to see Clay County build everything that they can afford to build because we need it. And we don't know where the actual construction bids are going to come in. Again, in the range of, I think it was like, I don't know, 15 jobs within 300 miles of here. Our estimate is over $100 a square foot higher than the next one. And so I'm hopeful that the actual construction bid is not going to come back at $426 a square foot. I think, or I'm hopeful that it will come back at least around the average, which is more like $340 a square foot, which if it does, we're going to be able to build more than just the main hub and the middle school wing. It might just be a 5th grade, or maybe it'll be the whole thing. But I just think we need to be prepared, and then build whatever we can build. That would be my hope.
My quick comment is there's 2 processes. There's this outside process of macroeconomics that we can't control. But as we draw, as our engineers and architects draw on this project, the unknowns, become smaller and smaller and smaller. So by the time we get to our DD pricing, the wedge of unknowns at schematic design was this wide part, right? The wedge of unknowns when we're done with design development at the end of August is this narrow part. The wedge of unknowns when we finish our construction documents, in theory, is 0.
Right.
So
we're close to the actual bid mark.
Yeah.
At that time.
Yeah, and the time has this, that's the point where there's no more time fluctuations. We don't have, escalation that we're accounting for anymore, except for what happens during construction. But we've limited escalation, we've limited unknowns in our design, and now we're bidding. And so as we get closer, the numbers become more predictable and more illustrative of what we think will happen on bid day.
I know we're dependent on the legislature to allot that extra money in terms of another grant.
Mm-hmm.
Is it set up to where if you got, like us, we got the $40 million grant, will we automatically get that 10, or you have to apply for that?
We have to
additional?
apply for it.
Okay.
And that's why I wanted to bring it up here. The list of qualifications that we saw seemed really leaning towards getting projects that were already funded done. So our schools being consolidated, that was on the list. Are the projects who've been affected by the inflation? Well, everybody's on that list. Are they? So I think that we looked through a list of about 10 qualifications, and we checked the box on about 8 of them. So it's built for people to finish projects that were funded in the original round of grants.
Based on my knowledge of grant writing, I see no way that we don't get that grant if the legislature approves it.
Yep.
That's the thing.
But if we come in at the building average, well, if we come in at 344 square foot, I think we can build the whole thing. I can't remember, but it won't be, we wouldn't need $50 million. We could do something good with the $40 million that we already have. So.
And I've been getting opinions of local builder here, and they think it's very doable.
And that's what it's like. If we get the additional $10 million grant, and then when we go out to construction bid, if it comes back at around the average, which is $340, $350 a square foot, we'll be able to build the whole thing.
Yes.
It's just those are variables that you got to plan for the worst. So we needed a plan for, with the money we have right now, what do we know we can build? And so that's a middle school with the main hub. So that's kind of where we are, and we're planning for what if these other things click into place.
Yeah.
Because I worry about when we get to this point of this wedge, what happens after? That's just one of those things
so
I
the typical
worry. It's like,
thing to do is you bid.
Costs are off the roof.
Yes, costs are still going to be out of our control at that point. We are required to have 3 bidders. Sometimes out in rural counties, that's a difficulty, so that extends the bid process a little bit longer because you can advertise and then you're allowed to accept with less than 3. You can accept with 1. At that point, if you're relatively close, you enter into a process of negotiating with the GC, and they start throwing out ideas of how they can reduce the cost. You say you can substitute this roof material for that roof material, or you can substitute. We really can't get this in Clay County. but we can get this. So you start going through, and it's hard work, but I think I've never met a general contractor who wasn't willing to do that work in earnest. So that's what you do if we're within a
And
certain
they
distance.
want us to build this
Yeah,
school. They want that
absolutely.
job.
Yeah, they
So
want
they're
that.
they're incentivized to find a way.
And sometimes they help with the phasing where they know, hey, we can save 6 months if we do it.
Yeah,
this way.
yeah,
And that's a lot of money in general condition.
Right.
yeah. So yeah, that's another thing. They're better at the schedule than I am, for sure.
Very good.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments? Well, thank you guys. Appreciate your time. Appreciate you coming over. I know that's
Yes, so glad
a
to-
drive from Asheville, so
No,
I
glad to
appreciate
do
you
it.
doing that. So
Glad to do it.
It's beautiful. And have a good board.
thank you. Y'all too.
Yeah.
Be safe going back.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have the primary school's academic data reports, and
Yes, so Miss Heather Clemens, the principal, she really wanted to be able, she couldn't be here tonight because she already had her vacation planned, but she wanted to be able to deliver her end of year results from her own lips. So she created a Screencastify video that we're going to play for the public and for the board now with Ms. Clemens presenting her data from this past year, her state data.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share our data for Primary School results
for our end-of-year results after our
in-class
in-class and our ready assessments.
Overall, we are very pleased with how
Overall, we are very pleased with how our data turned out. We had a lot of growth in a lot of areas, and I'm excited to share those with you as we look through these next slides. After our middle of the year assessments, we weren't pleased with the growth as we had hoped we would be. So that caused us to shift gears. We decided that we needed to change how we were doing our tier 2 interventions, and we also needed
as a
to
school on one particular area or domain. And so as a school, we chose to focus on what is called nonsense word fluency. When we say nonsense word fluency, it's a little hard to understand. Well, why do we need students to understand nonsense words? Well, one thing that we've learned from our science of reading training through letters is that students really need the ability to break a word down based on the alphabetic and phonics principles so that they can sound it out rather than just memorizing a word just by sight. That's been a big shift for schools across North Carolina and different states across the nation. We've gone from where we used to send home lists of words and students would memorize those. Well, essentially all they're doing is they're memorizing it. And then when they get a new word or they get those new letters in a different context, they aren't able to decode those words and read them. So by teaching nonsense words or measuring nonsense word fluency, students are able to put words together out of letters, sound them out, and in a sense decode those, making them into sounds. And then they can build that back into more complex words as they grow in their fluency. So some of our changes that we implemented really impacted primarily our Tier 2 curriculum. We use Foundations as our core instruction for phonics, so we also started using that primarily or singularly as our Tier 2 intervention material. We changed our schedule. That was probably the hardest part about all of this, was changing our schedule so that we could make our interventions go from in some cases 2 times a week to a minimum of 3 times a week, and then we could intensify to 4 or 5 days a week as needed based on student data. And we also started gathering multiple data points. The M-Class does provide progress monitoring tools, so we use those, but then we also use what is called the Foundations probes. So this is just a little bit of a deeper dive into the phonics-based instruction to really help determine what the root cause of a student's misunderstanding is. So what we saw, or what we have discovered, is that those changes really had an impact on our overall student success. So it's broken down here on this slide by kindergarten, first, and second grade. And you can see that in the beginning, we were at 21% proficiency, and by the end of the year, we were at 77% proficiency in correct letter sounds in kindergarten. And then as that skill develops or intensifies, you go to words read correctly. So it's putting those sounds together into words. In first and second grade, both, we were in the low to mid 50% proficiency. And by the end, we were at 80% proficiency in both those grades, in both those domains. So that was really a big celebration for us. Ideally, the whole MTSS framework would say that you are at an 80% proficiency to show that your core is effective. So that's where we're leaning now. Rather than having to do that through tier 2 interventions next year, that really needs to be where we're getting our core work done and then being able to take that and do tier 2 and then tier 3 where needed interventions. We got some good feedback from teachers after the work was done. We know it was difficult. Everybody put in a lot of hard work. We changed a lot of schedules, but overall it was very impactful. And this is just some indication of that, about what the teachers had to say about that. Looking at this, we are showing the difference in where we were at the end of the year last year versus the end of the year this year. And we saw a huge growth in our blue. So you're looking at 45% of our students in kindergarten are either at or above grade level. And then compared to last year, only 28% of those were at or above grade level. So this is what we want to see. We want to see the blues grow and the reds decrease in M class. First grade, very similar trend. We went from 17% of our students above grade level last year to now a third of our students in first grade above grade level. And in second grade, you see the trend continue. We had 16% of our students above grade level, and now we're at 21%. And you can see, likewise, on the other end of that, our reds are decreasing. So we're having less and less students going on to the next grade, a grade level or more behind in where they should be with M class and in their reading and phonics. So overall, I thought this was interesting. It's just a way to compare us to the state of North Carolina. I think there's a lot of things we could attribute this to with our state trends. We've come out of COVID, and also the implementation of letters across the state has really changed some dynamics across our school. So you can see North Carolina last year beginning of the year compared to the end of the year. And this is how we compared to that at Hayesville Primary School. So our beginning of the year versus our end of the year. So I'm pleased to see that our students in Clay County are outperforming our grade level peers across the state. Again, this is the kindergarten viewpoint. That trend continues in first grade. North Carolina, beginning of year to the end of the year, and then Hayesville Primary School, beginning of year to end of year. And then our second graders, North Carolina, beginning to end, and Hayesville Primary School, beginning to end. All right, so that's all the information I have for M class. Again, I'm very pleased overall with our results, and I'll share with you at the end our plans as we go into next school year, and some plans that we have for getting some work done over the summer. So I also wanted to share our iReady data with you. And as you know, this is an assessment that students take on an iPad. They do this on their own. They have headphones on. So it's a little bit less, I feel a little less accurate than M class because it's not as guided, but it still gives us a second measure of how students are doing in reading, and then it gives us a math measure as well. So what we did, or what you'll see on this slide, is the end of the year iReady reading comparison from 2022 to 2023 overall. As you can see, I think you can see, move this over a little bit more. We were at a 71% proficiency at or above grade level ending last school year, and we have increased that overall by 6 percentage points. So we've increased our reading level to 77% at or above grade level. And on the opposite end of that, the reds have decreased as well. So that's definitely what we want to see. Oops. There we go. This is math, looking at overall from last year to this year. So we finished the year at 68% at or above grade level in the 2022 school year, and then ending the 2023 school year, we had a pretty big jump there to 76%. So I'm very pleased with that. We've got a lot of work to do, but we've got a plan in place for how to address that. This breaks down each grade level. You'll see on what I see on the left side of my screen versus on the right. So I've got reading and a math comparison. We're looking at the end of the year, and then we're comparing that to where we were at the middle of the year. And the same thing for math. So I'm very pleased on both of these. We're above 90% of students in Tier 1, which means they're right where they need to be. And we are at less than 10% of students that are at risk for Tier 2 based on the iReady assessment. So that's very encouraging to see those numbers in both areas. This is first grade. I'm very pleased with this jump in math from the middle of the year to how we finished at the end of the year. That's a tremendous amount of growth to go from 18% at Tier 1 up to 68% at Tier 1. And then in reading, a very similar trend. We went from 39% up to 69%. So I'm pleased with both of those. And in second grade, again, big jumps in both domains, math and reading, from middle of the year to the end of the year. And as we always want to see, we're pushing the red out. That means those are students that are at risk for Tier 3, so they are likely to be 1 to 2 grade levels below where they need to be. And that has ended up at 4% in both the reading and the math. So percentage-wise, I feel good about that. I would have liked to be smaller, absolutely. And we're going to do some things to hopefully make that happen, and you'll see those changes next year. All right, so next steps for us at Hayesville Primary School. Some of the main things that we're going to do for reading, we're going to continue to strengthen our core with foundations training. Breeze Raxter is our instructional coach, and she is a trainer at this point. So all of our new teachers coming in will be able to get firsthand foundations training, and we're going to continue that work with all of our teachers because it goes right along with our letters training that we've all come through over the last 2 years. We do want to look at our data decision rules in our MTSS process to make sure that we're really hitting those tiers of interventions right where we need to. We've sometimes end up with students in a tier that probably could have avoided that had they gotten appropriate core instruction with some differentiation. So we want to be able to do that for our students and make sure our staff is fully trained and capable of implementing those as we need them to. We're always looking at other options for our reading curriculum, but right now we're pleased with the results, and we attribute a lot of that to, well, it's definitely instruction and instructional practices, but you need a good curriculum as well. So we're going to stick with Ready Reading, and then Foundations for Phonics, and then we use Haggerty for some phonemic awareness as well. So we're going to stick with all of those and just really focus on strengthening those. So big changes for us in math. We knew that this was an area that we were lower in starting the year, and we've just worked through the year to try to figure out what we need to do. One thing that we've done is we're partnering with NCAT, and we have a lady her name's Emily Myers, and she works through NCAT, and she's going to be doing a lot of instructional coaching with us this year with our teachers, really focusing on core instructional practices. And then one of the biggest weaknesses we have is a really great math measure for our data. We have iReady, but it's really not as strong as what we need it to be. So we are going to adopt the NCs. And I know you're excited about another acronym, but that stands for North Carolina Early Numeracy Skills Indicators. So I've been working with Julie Weatherman, and we're going to train our staff on this. And what that will do is it will give us another benchmark assessment 3 times a year, and it will really narrow down those numeracy skills that students are weak in, and it will give us it won't provide the progress monitoring tools, but it at least lets us know what the areas are that we need to focus on. So we are really excited about that. I look forward to leading our staff through these changes that we anticipate for the coming school year, and hopefully this time next year we'll be able to report back in with some really great changes and improvements overall, especially in our math area, but also in the reading as we continue to work on that. If you guys have any questions for me at any time, I'll be around, so just reach out to me, and I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their summer.
that in reading, by grade level, by the state assessment, which is M-class, kindergarten was 77% of our students at or above grade level, and first and second grade were both 80% at or above grade level. And I've told the board before, if we are doing the job we are capable of doing with instruction, we should have 80% of our students at tier 1, which is grade level proficient or better. 15% will be in tier 2, which means they're going to need a little extra support, and less than 5% would be in tier 3, meaning they are 2 grade levels or more behind. So I'm really proud to hear that at the primary school we are that close to getting to that point, and I'm so proud of Ms. Clemens can speak the language now when it comes to data and exactly what we're looking for. And so really impressed by their work and the work of her team.
Absolutely.
Very impressive.
And if we can send 80% of them reading and doing math on grade level or better to the 3rd grade, Miss Godfrey is going to be happy.
And it just keeps trickling.
I would say that's a tough act to follow. However, I'm really, really proud of our teachers and kids, and I'm excited to share with you what we've accomplished this year. So I decided to mix it up a little bit and change up my graphs and show you a little bit of historical view. So this is school-wide math over the last 3 years, and you'll see that overall we were 77%, so we're super close to that 80%, 17% in tier 2, and then 6% in tier 3 for the 2023 school year. But you can also see how that has changed over the last 3 years, and we're steadily going up. We started in 2021 at 59% green, and we've gotten that up to 77%. At the bottom, you can see what our median growth for each year was in overall math. And so obviously we want that to be 100% or higher, and we have sustained that for the last 3 years. And so I'm really, really proud of that. On the next few slides, we've broken that down by grade level because I think it's important for each of our grade levels to receive recognition.
Ms. Godfrey, I just want to clarify, this is iReady data.
This is iReady data.
Not EOG data.
Correct. We'll get there. So yes, this is iReady data. Again, in 3rd grade math, we started 3 years ago at 65% in tier 1, and we've advanced that to 75%. So when we're looking for those 80, 15, 5 triangles, we're getting very close, and we're very proud of that. And again, if you look at our median growth, for each of those years, we've been able to stay over 100%, well over 100% each of those years in math. And then 4th grade math, you see a very similar trend. We started at 62% in tier 1, and look at that last triangle. It is 80% in tier 1 this year, with 15% in tier 2 and 4% in tier 3. And you can see those median growths continue to be over 100%. So super proud of our 4th grade team as well. The last slide we have is 5th grade math, and they were at 77% tier 1, 16% and 7% in tier 3. So we are very proud of that, very proud of the growth that our teachers have maintained. If you look at 5th grade math 2 years ago, we were at 51% tier 1, and we've advanced that to 77%. So I think a lot of the processes and frameworks that we're putting into place, we're finally seeing the payoff of that, and our teachers are excited, and they have a sense of urgency about achieving these goals, which I'm very thankful for. On our next slide, you can see that this is just for this year, but this shows the median growth for each group based on how they performed on their initial assessment. So at the beginning of the year, that bottom line shows students who scored 3 or more grade levels below, and then works all the way up to our mid or above grade levels at the beginning of the year. And this shows their median growth. And what I'm really, really proud of about this is that all of those groups are at 100% or higher. So that shows that our MTSS framework is working. And to have our mid or above grade level kids, those are usually our kids that have been hardest to reach, and that's really been an area of focus for us. Being over 100% was super exciting for us. So that's a little bit of iReady math for you. Next we'll look at iReady reading. We have some work to do in reading, but nonetheless, I'm super proud of our progress and growth. We have gone from 59% 2 years ago in Tier 1 up to 67%. So we're not quite at that 80% mark, but if you look at our median growth for this year, we were at 185%. On an average. So I think that shows that many of the professional development opportunities that our teachers are engaging in, they're starting to put those practices into work, and we're seeing that growth in students. And so to break that down a little bit by grade level, we'll take a look the same way at third grade reading. Third grade reading, we were super close on that 80%. We were at 79% in Tier 1 at the end of this year, with a median growth of 159% for our third graders in reading. So super proud of that. Looking at fourth grade, we were at 60% in Tier 1. And with a median growth of 165%. So even though those triangles aren't quite where we want them to be, we're headed in the right direction. And each year it's gotten higher and higher. Fifth grade reading, we have a similar trend. We started 2 years ago at 48%, and we've increased that to 65% with our median growth being 208%. So, lots to celebrate, and on the next slide it has again our breakdown by the students, where they started, and this again shows, and our growth is higher in reading than it is in math, and again to have those lower students, 169%, 205%, all the way up to our highest students having 157%. I just think that our teachers are doing really good work at differentiating the core and then providing interventions when those students need it. And so I'm super pleased with how well our students have performed. I'm very proud of our teachers. The next few slides I'm going to share with you are our EOG results. We had an increase of 3% in our overall math, and that put us at 67.2% proficient. Our overall reading, we increased 7.4%. So again, you see that carryover, that high growth in reading carrying over to EOGs. We were at 61.7%. And then we increased almost 5% in science. So I think one of the frustrating pieces for us is that what we see in iReady doesn't align exactly with what we see on EOGs, and so we've really been trying to pinpoint why is there a difference. I really think it's stamina. So our students, when they take EOGs, they're taking a 50 to 60 question test over a 3-hour time period, and I just think we've really got to work on our students' stamina. I think iReady is a great program, and it is research-based to show correlation, but I'm also glad that the state in 2 years will be implementing a different approach to standardized testing that will hopefully be a little bit easier for our students to maintain focus and stamina during those assessments. But my last slide I wanted to share with you is the growth at Hayesville Elementary over the last 3 years. So overall in the last 3 years we've increased in math by 17.5%, in reading by 12.8%, and in science by 7.9%. So I'm super proud of our kids, excited about the trend we're on, and happy to answer any questions you have.
I don't have anything to ask because it's just, you're to be commended. I mean, and the teachers, same for Heather, and I'm sure middle school and high school too. It just blows my mind.
Well, and I want to say too that we have prioritized additional supports for K-5 because we believe that to be the foundation of everything else. And the more kids we can send to 6th grade, reading on grade level particularly, the better off they're going to be all the way through high school. And so the primary school and the elementary school have both gotten instructional coaches to work with their teachers. They've also both gotten intervention teachers to pull kids out that are in Tier 2 and 3 and really give them the additional support that they need during other times of the day. They don't have that luxury at the middle school and the high school. But Communities for Students does provide tutoring at both of our 612 schools. So that isn't to take away from the results, because I am stoked about the changes and the results that I've seen over the last 3 to 4 years in K-5. And it's because of the commitment to doing letters training, which was really tough, but our teachers went through, they were in the first cohort in the state to do it so that we could get the results first because our kids deserved it. And then building this MTSS framework, which has been a huge amount of work, but it's paying dividends. Those numbers don't lie.
Yeah, just a plug for my instructional coach and my interventionist. You know, we have asked our teachers to deliver our Tier 2 interventions, and that has required them to restructure their schedule. But our instructional coach has been there to hold their hand, show them how to use the materials that they have, how to rework their schedule to fit it in, how to manage their other students while they're doing the interventions. And then our interventionist takes care of our Tier 3 interventions. And so we're very pleased with how our structures are working, and it's allowed us to be able to really implement our MTSS framework. So.
I think too, all this on top of teaching every single day.
Yep.
I mean, you know, you think about all these things and then you're still teaching every single day.
Teaching their hearts out.
It just, yeah.
I've got a great crew.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we have the middle school.
So I'm going to say that's a step back follow, but I'm very thankful. I'm very thankful for Melissa and Heather because what they're doing at the primary and the elementary actually makes our job a little bit easier. So hopefully that trend will continue to grow in the middle school. That's kind of what we have to do next. So I'm going to start with already as well. And so just overall, when you look at our overall placement, you can see that we had an increase of 6% in reading, so from 44 to 50. In math, 11%, which I was proud of, from 31 to 42, so we're making little gains in math overall. We had decreases in both Tier 2 and Tier 3. So on our next one, you can look at 6th grade reading. Super proud of 6th grade ELA and math this year. 13% increase in proficiency from 41 to 54, and math increased 16% in proficiency from 40 to 56. So that's 6th grade. 7th grade had a 2% increase in proficiency from 44 to 46.
Hang on just a second. I think we're a slide behind.
Oh, sorry.
Is this 7?
Yep,
Okay,
now we're going to 7th.
at 7th
Yep,
grade.
there we go. One more, Adrian. 7th grade math had a 12% increase in proficiency from 22 to 34. Got a little bit of work to do there, but sending some good things to 7th grade next year, so hopefully that'll increase next year. Next, we look at 8th grade reading. We had an increase in 4% of proficiency from 47 to 51. And next, 8th grade math, we had a 6% increase in proficiency from 30 to 36. And then I wanted to show you guys this because this year we had 2 focus areas for reading, and that was to increase informational text and vocabulary. And so in 6th grade, this is actually below grade level percentages. And in 6th grade, you can see they decreased their below grade level percentages by 12% in vocabulary and 7% in informational text. 7th grade actually decreased their informational text below grade level percentage by 5%. And 8th grade below grade level percentages decreased by 4% in vocabulary and 5% in informational text. So proud of them there. Next will be our EOG data. And so when I looked, mine's a little bit different than what Melissa did, but when I looked at this, when I looked at our EOG data, I looked at 2 comparisons, and I wanted to look at what Melissa sends, the students that Melissa sends, and making sure that we continue the trend of growth. And so I looked at the proficiency rate from last year and then how they did this year. So in math last year, there was a proficiency rate of 51.31, and this year there was 60.91. So that was actually an increase.
So hang on just a second. So what you're showing there is a cohort of students,
yes,
other than the ones that moved away,
yes,
or whatever. But it's pretty much going to be the same group of students. 21-22, they were in the 5th grade, and
yes,
they were 51.3% proficient in math. This year, that same group is in 6th grade,
yes,
and this year they were 60.9% proficient. Okay.
Correct. So want to keep them growing, and so that kind of closed the gaps there. But I also want to look at how we performed last year in 6th grade compared to this year, and so we had some growth there as well. It was 2.9% growth in proficiency over last year. So kudos to Kristen there. 7th grade, you can see that we had a proficiency rate of 50.56. Still a little bit more work to do in 7th, and Eighth grade, we had a proficiency rate for eighth grade math of 15.4, and I'll explain that in just a second. Math 1 had a proficiency rate of 79.17. So something happened in eighth grade math this year that kind of threw everything off, and that is Kim Wilson, our math teacher, left in the middle of the year. And so she was preparing to do that like late November. And then we started with Danielle Barter in January. So she came aboard, and so there's a little bit of a gap there in the instruction. And their teaching ways were very different too. So that's deceiving. I really feel like that percentage is deceiving, and I have full confidence that next year we'll see a little bit different story in eighth grade. So hopefully, I just didn't want you to look at that and think that we weren't working. She was working. Just something unusual happened this year. So next, was really proud of this too. So you can see how the cohorts grow from year to year. Big jump in, of course, in sixth grade again. So from fifth grade, they had a 50% proficiency rate, and then they had a 57.4 in sixth grade this year. So a growth of 7.5%. Sixth grade to seventh grade, a 1% increase, and seventh grade to eighth grade was like a 2 percentage points. So proud of that. You can see how they compared from year to year. The percent proficient in sixth grade last year was 45.45. This year was 57.47, so super proud of that. Went down a little bit in seventh grade and up a little in eighth, about 2 percentage points again. So that's reading. And then science, we had, compared to last year, we had a 9.12% increase in proficiency. So Austin finished this year with 80.68% proficient. So proud of him as well. So kudos to sixth grade ELA and math for all their hard work, and Austin for all of his hard work. Super proud of the first year of my principalship. So, looking ahead and moving on, and hopefully, like I said, things that the students who are coming are more well prepared, and hopefully we can just continue that trend. Any questions for me?
I just wanted to point out too the exponential impact that higher proficiency percentages coming from K-5 have on middle school, because by using iReady and our other data assessments to pinpoint what students know and what they don't know at the beginning of the year, when our middle school teachers are able to then meet the students where they are, it's going to be a big difference when, this year 50% of our fifth graders came to sixth grade on grade level. And next year, I think 68% are going to come to sixth grade on grade level. Now you meet them where they are, and instead of going from 50 to 57% or 59% in sixth grade, now you're looking at starting at right around 68% and moving them maybe to 70+% proficient. And we're edging towards getting to that 80% tier 1 that we're shooting for. So that's the reason why you put the resources in at K-5, so that you have that eventual impact at middle school. So we're getting there. We're not where we want to be, but we're definitely getting there.
Was that a 10-point increase in science from last year to this year?
Correct.
That's a big deal, isn't it?
Yes.
That's
It's a big jump.
And I think too, Missy, is everything's trending up. And that's, to me, I think about middle school students anyway, they're going through so much.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we all were there, how we thought.
Different animals, aren't they?
Yeah, but we're trending up.
Yes.
And that's a positive, and that's to be celebrated.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So good job.
Thank you, Miss.
Good job.
You gonna make a comment? No. Okay. Okay.
Good evening, Board of Education, Clay County. I'm just going to dive right into the high school's unofficial results. These are, actual results of EOC tests from the entire year, from the fall and the spring together. So this is our year. And again, they are unofficial, but we can count. They're pretty accurate for the most part. I don't see a lot of changes coming with this. So we'll start with Math 1. Math 1 was almost 49% proficient. That was up from last year, a little bit, about 3%. But if you look over the last 2 years, it's 25% jump in 2 years, okay? I think the state average in Math 1 is like around 33%. So we're doing really well there.
A couple of things too, I guess if you were getting ready to skip, I do want the board and the public to realize Math 1 is quite a bit tougher at the high school level because we allow our top students to take Math 1 as 8th graders. So almost all of our strongest math students take Math 1 in the 8th grade, which means they're not taking it in high school. So the students that are taking Math 1 in high school are the students that aren't quite at that top level in math. So that always shows up in the numbers. And also, not to bring up the dreaded word, but COVID had the most impact on math scores. Math scores were horrible nationwide 2 years ago. Bounced back a little bit last year, but we're still kind of pulling back from that. So I just
Wasn't that something I saw, that the 8th grade Math 1 was 96%?
There you go.
Proficient.
Yeah.
So
Right.
that's-
So
Let's see.
all those students are removed.
I just wanted to make sure if Mr. Oberlin, if he wasn't going to say that himself, I was going to make sure that everybody knew that.
That's true. Okay, next slide, please, Adrian. Math 3, we were down a little bit this year. There are some reasons for that. Math 3 is the toughest class, I think, in high school. It's the toughest diploma credit that most students will take in 4 years of high school. And there is some tension there between graduation rate and Math 3, to be honest with you. A lot of students will take Math 3 and in junior year, most of them will. And then some that fail during junior year, they need to retake it in their senior year, and they need to pass it to graduate. And so, that's sort of the trade-off that we have sometimes. This is still well above the state average. Last year, and I don't know what it'll be this year, but it's pretty stable. And last year, the state average was 53% proficiency in Math 3. So, we're still going to be above the state average, I think. In English 2, last year it was 60.6, so we're up an even 5% in English 2 proficiency, which is tremendous. I mean, that is all sophomores, so that's a true look at a grade level reading in high school, 10th grade. We don't really have any 9th graders taking English 2. There might be a handful of juniors taking English 2 for a second time, but that's a pretty good look. And again, English 2 years in a row of gains, so very happy with that. In biology, we were up 13 points from last year, so biology is back from where it was from the events of the last couple of years. I'm not going to say it. Again, 2 years of growth in a row in biology, and I expect last year with that 57.5, we were the best in the West. If you look at the far West, basically what I would call the Smoky Mountain Conference high schools, we were the top, and we got better. So I expect we'll be top again this year. But you never know; somebody might come up with a big number on that. Graduation rate, again, this is the one that I said. Sometimes there's some give and take with Math 3 and graduation. We did bounce back. Last year we were disappointed in our graduation rate. It was, 11 points lower than this. So, at about 77% graduation rate. A lot of reasons for that. No excuses for that. We're glad to see it coming back this year. Again, we're going to be above the state average, I think. That's usually around 86%. For a high school graduation rate from year to year. So pleased with that. When we get our official results before the September board meeting, I expect confirmation of this good news. I think our school performance grade will remain a B, which is what it was last year. I think our performance score should go up a few points. I'm certain that we're going to meet growth again, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed and see. I mean, we were really close to exceeding growth last year, and we have a good shot at doing that this year with these results. I just want to give credit to the teachers and students. They did all the work. School leadership, board members, school improvement team. I was a naval officer, so I'll use a little metaphor there. We set the course. We give the direction, chart the course out, but the teachers and the students are the ones steering that ship every single day, every single class. So I'm proud of them. I see every day our school, our interaction between teachers and students and the work happening, coming closer and closer to that vision and mission that we've set of focusing on each and every kid and their success. It's happening, and I see it every day, so I'm really happy with that. With the size of a school like ours, we've always known every student by name, and that's just kind of a neat thing. If you've ever worked in a bigger school, that's unusual. So we've always known their names, but now we know their needs, and I think we're really starting to focus in on those individual student needs, and that alignment and that focus that I'm talking about is borne out by these results. So thank you for your time tonight. Any questions or comments for high school?
Well, I do. In particular, Mr. Erlin, the graduation rate, what are we seeing? I mean, this was awesome to see that growth and stuff, but what are we seeing like from our students? What are just some of the things that are factoring in for them not graduating?
Right. I would say most of them, but if they make it to their senior year, they're on track to graduate.
Yeah.
We had 82 students, I would say early in this past school year, we had 82 seniors, and we graduated 82 seniors. If they make it that far, then they're on that path, and they're going to make it. It's unusual for a senior or a late junior to drop out. But what is happening with some students is, they have other options now. There are other models. There's other places that they can go to earn their diploma. And whenever they go do that, they are initially counted as a dropout. And we hope is not a very good strategy, but we hope that they will complete their program, or if it's not going well, that they'll drop back in. They can drop out, they can drop in. And ultimately, we want them to get the diploma, because that's going to set the foundation for their success after high school. But
and not only do we have to hope that they finish an alternative program, we have to hope that they notify us to let us know and give us some documentation that we can then send to the state to prove that that kid left us and then finished somewhere else. Because otherwise, that dropout hit falls on us. So.
I think that was my question.
That was your question?
Yeah,
okay.
Basically, if they start high school, they go somewhere else and they don't finish and notify us of that, that counts as a strike against us.
yes,
right?
That's it. That's
If it's an
right.
alternative, now if they transfer to another high school,
that's different.
That's different. But if they go to like a job training or a vocational school or something at the community college, something like that, and then they don't finish, or if they go to another state, which when you're on a border, they can easily go to Tennessee or Georgia and go into some of their programs, and then those schools don't communicate with us. So we're kind of dependent on the kid to kind of let us know if they finished or not, and they don't always do that. So it makes it tough.
So that affects out. I got you.
Right, but a lot of these are happening even in 10th grade, to be honest with you. When a student turns 16 in North Carolina, there's no compulsory attendance law, so a student can drop out at that point, and we don't want them to do that. We do everything we can to try to talk them out of it and make some adjustments to their schedules or what have you. But there are some students that have checked out of school by then, and they're just waiting for that birthday, unfortunately. It's sad.
That's one of the longer term effects, again, from COVID. When the schools shut down, a lot of students went out and got jobs. Yeah. And then when school went back in session, they were used to making that money and they didn't want to give it up. And so they dropped out to keep the job and didn't finish. And so it'll take until it doesn't show until we get to what would have been their graduation year. Mm-hmm. So we've still got a year or two left of this that I think we'll see impacts in our graduation rate from COVID.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Any other questions or comments? But very nice. Thank you all for doing that and for sharing that info. It's, all of it was impressive, and like Kelly said, impressive that it's all trending upward, which is good. And the data is nice, but I think the other thing behind that is the culture that's being created within each school that drives that data. So thank you all for doing that. So next item on the agenda is our policy 7340, which is the employee dress and appearance policy.
So in May at the regular meeting, I shared with the board the regular policy updates from the School Boards Association. I then also shared a folder of regulations. These regulations they kind of come as sort of a full Monty from the School Boards Association, and then I work with the different directors that these regulations really apply to their areas. So Angel and I worked on the regulations that apply to personnel, federal programs. Shelley and I worked on regulations that apply directly to finance. So just different ones. And I shared those with the board for you to review, and had on the agenda tonight for most of them to be on the agenda for action. But of course the board can, you can decide what you want to do with those. But one in particular I mentioned last month that I probably felt like there would need to be a couple of months of discussion of, and that is regulations for policy 7340, employee dress and appearance. I've shared this with you again, and I've just added some handwritten notes. I didn't want to leave without just kind of sharing my thoughts on employee dress and appearance. And then of course the board can have further discussion tonight and think about it some more over the next month, and maybe make a decision on these regulations in July. That would be up to the board. So I put the full list of dress and appearance regulations out to the staff in May and asked everyone to respond. There were, for the most part, 5 specific areas that the teachers that responded with concerns, those concerns were in these 5 areas. And I just wanted to kind of go through those and just share my thoughts. The first one was shirts should be tucked in unless designed to be worn out. I think that the idea behind this is that the expectation is that male teachers tuck their shirt in. Female teachers maybe not so much, but it's difficult. You're not really supposed to have different expectations for your staff members based on sex. So as a result, I would just say I would recommend that be cut from the list. I think in general our teachers do a good job of doing what I would say is a standard expectation for professional dress. I don't really think we need that one in there. So that's just my thoughts, my recommendation, and the board can take that and do what you will with it. The next area that the staff had concerns about was they felt like, the regulation is athletic or slip-on shoes and or tennis shoes approved due to orthopedic concerns, work assignment, special activity, or work duties on a particular day, which would also mean that in general, tennis shoes would not be allowed for teachers except under these circumstances. I think in this day and time, people wear Air Jordans with suits. And our teachers are on their feet all day. And so I personally don't have a problem with teachers wearing athletic shoes during the day. I would recommend that bullet point be cut. Next would be listed under inappropriate attire is blue denim jeans unless approved by the principal on special days. Again, I think expectations have sort of changed over the years. I would recommend that the board think about that. I'm not going to say cut it. I don't think our teachers should be allowed to wear jeans that have holes in them. I don't think they should be allowed to wear jeans that are splotched and faded and that sort of thing. But a solid colored, black or blue or khaki pair of jeans can look very nice with a jacket or a jacket like Mr. Crawford is wearing. So, but then I know some folks just don't like blue jeans as professional dress. So I think that's one particular area the board should maybe think about further and discuss further about what you think should be appropriate or not. So just my thoughts. Next page, t-shirts or sweatshirts of any kind unless previously approved by the principal for a designated special occasion or spirit day. I think currently we kind of allow jeans and spirit wear on Fridays, particularly game days. I know that our teachers enjoy wearing t-shirts that have some kind of pro public education slogan on the front, or pro teacher, or pro learning. I don't have a problem with that. I think it promotes what we're trying to do. I think you can also wear a t-shirt that is, say, a solid green. It can look very nice, again, under a jacket or a sweater. So I would recommend that this be cut from. Now, I don't think that teachers should wear, kind of a surfing t-shirt with a pair of jeans. I don't think that would be appropriate. But I do think that certain t-shirts should be allowed. So I think there again, that can be an area where principals are allowed some leeway, and it doesn't necessarily have to be in the regulations. And then last, quite a few of our teachers had an issue with not allowing jewelry affixed to an employee's nose, mouth, tongue, lip, chin, cheek, or eyebrow. Again, I think expectations have changed. And I think that we have to think in terms of how difficult it is to find quality teachers these days. And I always think, as a former high school principal, I always think of high school math teachers. And if I was looking at a high quality high school math teacher, am I willing to send them out the door without a job if they have a lip ring? Me personally, I would not be willing to do that. I would want to hire them. It does not interfere with their ability to teach. Honestly, it's so commonplace now. I don't think it's a distraction to the students. But that's my thoughts. I wanted to share those with the board. That's the reason why I highlighted this one, and I recommended that be cut as well. So that's just me sharing my thoughts. Obviously, this is not on the action agenda for tonight, so no vote is necessary. And any further discussion is up to the board.
Anybody want to make any comments on that? Want to read through it? Are you?
Yeah, I mean, the only other one I was going to bring up was particularly under the inappropriate attire.
Mm-hmm.
The one with spandex, yoga pants, leotards, leggings.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we do have in parentheses here, tights or leggings may be worn if covered by a dress or shirt of modest length. I guess my confusion here is like, I think about our PE teachers. I mean, some of that they wear to teach.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's something for us to think about.
Well, there have always been special exceptions for PE teachers as well as shop teachers.
Mm-hmm.
You could certainly write that into the regulations. But there are also looser fitting jogging pants, warm-up suits, that sort of thing that aren't spandex and form fitting that can be purchased as well, that are still PE clothes. So I think there's leeway there, and I think the board can discuss that, and you can make adjustments as you see fit. But you can always say that for PE teachers, if they are teaching PE, now if they're teaching health in a classroom that day, then they should follow the same regulations as everyone else. But you could say if they're teaching PE, then it would be allowed. Just like a shop teacher, if they're actually in the shop teaching welding today, then they're going to be allowed maybe to wear, jeans or heavy duty jeans. Whereas you might not allow that if they were teaching in the classroom that particular day. So the board always has that option.
Any other comments?
I just would like to make a comment. Regardless of how the board overall goes with this, I think it's important, in my personal opinion, I think it's important for us to follow this guidelines too when we come to board meetings. Mm-hmm. So like if we were to say no jeans, I think we shouldn't wear jeans. And that's just a comment. If we were to say no tennis shoes, I don't think we should wear tennis shoes. I just think that's important, however it goes.
Yeah, that's what you're saying.
Very good. Well, thank you all for those comments. Read over it. Obviously, email with questions or concerns. I guess we can maybe obviously Mr. Penland's sitting in the back there, so he'll be kind of taking over with next month with some of this. So he's here and listening in on some of this discussion as well. So I guess if you've got questions or comments, we can pass those on to. But Mr. Penland kind of accumulate those if he doesn't mind, and we can discuss those next month and make a decision.
I thought you'd like that.
But I do, I think like Mr. Caldwell said, I think it's important that we as a board, whatever happens, we follow that, so I appreciate that. And I think taking it in light of being professional, I mean, I see teachers as very much a profession to be very well respected. I mean, I see it as a very well respected profession, and I think there's nothing wrong with looking professional, but also taking some of that within societal and cultural norms and how that changes over the years, and being willing to look at that and being flexible. So I think just read through that, and then we'll plan on putting it on the action item for next month.
And Mr. Cole, we appreciate your work on putting this together too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, thank you. The next item is the athletic coaching stipend pay schedule, which hopefully will help us recruit and retain. Yeah, and this is action. Sorry, this is now into the action items. So I know that spreadsheet was emailed to everyone. So.
And just to clarify, currently our coaching stipends are just one set number, no matter how long they coach those sports. And in speaking with Mr. Overland and our athletic director, Mr. Cottrell, we just felt like there needed to be a pay progression of some kind in place that promoted the recruitment and retention of our coaches, because it's getting harder and harder to find coaches. And we've got some really good coaches. We want to keep them. And so we felt like the best way to incentivize them staying in coaching a particular sport is after they reach a certain threshold that obviously we feel like we can afford, that they get a raise. Shelley and I have worked on this for the last couple of months. We also researched what other districts in the West were doing. I do want to point out, and you probably saw it in the notes that I shared with you, our coaches are the best paid coaches in the Western region. So our coaches aren't underpaid, but still we feel like if you've been a coach in one sport for 5 years at our school, you should get a raise. So we've put together a pay progression that every coach of every sport, it sets their pay. No one is taking a pay cut by implementing this. We're starting at where they are. And then if they get 5 years of continuous coaching in that sport, they get a raise. And then once they get to years 10 to 15 and then 15 to 20, each 5-year span, they get a raise. And we hope that will incentivize them to keep doing it.
Any questions or comments about that coaching pay schedule?
Good. It looked really good.
Yeah, it would be good. So is there a motion that we approve that pay schedule as it was presented?
I'll make a motion, we approve it.
Ms. Beck, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Ms. Crawford, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next, we have budget amendments with Ms. Hollingsworth.
And I want to thank Ms. Hollingsworth and her team for all of their hard work. Fiscal year turnover is not a fun time of the year for the finance department.
Right now done with it, right?
No,
Tomorrow
and before
ends
I
the-
dive into these budget amendments, we did, back in March, we went live with the Link ERP, which is the web-based version of our financial software. We are a pilot district, so it has not been without a lot of, it hasn't been horrible, but it's had some headaches, and there's still some work that has to be done, but it's just, Mr. Cole gave a great example. We are driving the plane as it's being built around us. So, but I am happy to say we finished all of our work today in the software. We finished processing bills that we're going to do for this fiscal year. So I went ahead and I sent our data to Link, what will be uploaded to DPI sometime tomorrow, and our test file was fine. So hopefully tomorrow DPI will get it, and I will get released pretty early on Saturday morning to go home and be done until next week when we roll into July. So we will go ahead and get started on the budget amendments.
The first one is the State Public School Fund. We are budgeting an additional $62,031. And you can see down at the bottom in the notes, we've received an additional $27,843. And actually, we didn't receive that. That's a guaranteed allotment. So I needed to budget that amount to make sure that our budget reflects the funds we'll actually receive. We have the $21,564. That's longevity, annual leave, and bonus leave payouts. We had a few more of those payouts we had to process for folks that were separating employment and retirees. And again, that's a guaranteed allotment, so that will be an additional $21,564 there that they will fund. We received an additional $2 in interest for March and April for the School Technology Fund. The next three items you'll see in our small county supplemental funding and ABC transfer. The state gives us flexibility with certain funds where we can transfer those funds from one pot to the other. Our small county, small schools money has more flexibility with spending. We transferred into those funds $112,530. The disadvantaged student supplemental funding, we took $43,558 from that and to put into the small county funds, and then $68,972 out of our at-risk student services funds. And those were funds that were not budgeted for use, so we moved those over so we have more flexibility to spend them. We had an additional ABC transfer for our textbooks and digital resources of $12,622. Part of that was to purchase welding textbooks for the CTE program. Because of supplanting, we cannot pay for those textbooks out of CTE funds, so we have to fund those out of another state or local source. And then the rest of the changes that you'll see through there are just our realignments to align our expenses according to the DPI charts of accounts. And a lot of times at the end of the year, the reason why you see so many of those, and I like to call them, you have these parent accounts and you have all these children accounts up under them. And a lot of times at the beginning of the year, you're going to budget a big lump sum in a parent account. And as you're spending money during the year and have a better idea of how you're going to spend it and what purpose it's going to be spent on, then you move those funds around as you need to. So that's why you see a lot of that at the end of the year. Are there any questions on the state? Okay, moving to the local current expense fund. What I did is I went back and I analyzed our revenue and anywhere we were getting any additional revenues according to what we had already collected year to date. I went ahead and budgeted those. That'll give us a little bit of a cushion when we start processing payables and receivables after we hit July 1. And what those are is at the end of the year, sometimes with your local funds, you'll continue to receive bills that are for the prior year. And we have to make sure that we have those budgeted for in the prior year to pay them in the current year. So I went ahead and I did that. That was an additional $14,487.32. Part of that came from fines and forfeitures, $393. We had interest on investments, $1,153.25. And the reason why our interest is up in some in comparison to previous years is our cash flow is better in our local funds than it had been in previous years. So that means we're generating a little more interest. I mean, we're not making a ton of money off of it, but it is better than it used to be. The miscellaneous revenue, that is mainly generated, the $12,941 from where we get reimbursed from schools to fund subs for different reasons. It might be field trips, it may be that some of the teachers have had to go to something for athletics, and the schools have to actually turn those funds back in so we can pay them through payroll, and they reimburse us for that. And then the rest of everything you'll see down that column for amendment number 4 are just our realignments to align our expenses with a chart of accounts. And if you'll notice, most everything is being shifted and moved into the operational support services line item, and that's because of our big increases in utilities. So, are there any questions there? On the federal grants fund, we did need to budget an additional $946.99. We had ESSER digital curriculum. We had already used those funds, and actually those funds will expire. We had already used them, and we just needed to input the budget for that. And then the rest of those are going to be realignments to align expenses. And just as I said before, a lot of times you budget in a parent account, and you've got all these children account. And when we did the retention bonuses, and as an example, a lot of times you'll budget at the beginning of the year a big lump sum there, and then as we've spent those funds, we need to go ahead and move it from one pot over to the other, so those expenses align with their proper account code. Are there any questions on the federal? Then we have capital outlay fund. We needed to go ahead, and all these projects had been approved, and we had to submit these applications to the state to pull down those lottery R&R funds. Those were those renovation and restoration funds. Renovation and repair, I think, one of the two. So that was the HHS floor, the high school flooring, and partially that is funded by ESSER 3 monies, which is federal monies. That was $45,302.26. The painting of the interior of the elementary school, those are also the R&R funds. That's $53,325. And then the middle school gym HVAC, and that was partially funded with those athletic funds that we received probably about a year and a half, 2 years ago, $11,673.
And that will be turned on tomorrow.
Yeah, just real quick, I think the Hayesville High School floor replacement is about a third of the way done at this point, pretty close to a third. The goal is to have at least the main hallways, top and bottom, finished before students come back, as well as the main office and just a few classrooms that are more difficult to move the class. So for example, like the cooking classroom, we don't have another classroom with a kitchen in it. So we want to try to get that one done in the summer. Health occupations classrooms, and then Miss Gabby Smith, her downstairs math classroom has carpet that smells pretty bad that we want to get rid of and replace. So we're on track for that. Elementary school is pretty far along on the interior painting. When that's completed, the high school, the primary school, and the elementary school will have all been painted in the interior in the last 2 years. So they'll be in good shape. And then the middle school gym HVAC system is finished. And I believe the EMC is supposed to come out tomorrow and turn it on. So for the first time in its history, the Hayesville Middle School gym will have air conditioning. We're excited about it. Yeah.
The next one's the Education Foundation Fund, and this is Fund 7. During our audit last year, and actually in audits previous to that, it had been recommended that we had tons of savings accounts that each different scholarship fund was in, and that was a lot to keep up with. And they had us close all those savings accounts, which I did at the beginning of July of this fiscal year, and we moved all those funds to our local checking account, and then we started accounting for these funds in Fund 7, the Education Foundation Fund. And then during this school year, we received an additional $4,000 for our Clay County Building Community Scholarship Fund. So that'll be there, and I think that will be a recurring grant every year that they award, so we'll see that money coming in each year. Are there any questions on it? So Fund 8, the last one, our other specific revenue fund. If you've been with us on the board for a little while, you've noticed that this fund has grown significantly. We've had quite a few number of grants added to this over the years. We are adding an additional $104,068.71. We have to add an additional line item item to account for the fees that are going to be collected for the summer and after-school program that's part of that early childhood education grant that we received. I think that was Dogwood. That's $3,512.10 that we've received so far, so I need to go ahead and budget that because they had to go ahead and spend some of those funds to get started for the summer. Indirect costs.
Just
okay,
real
go
quick.
ahead.
So those are it's fees that are much cheaper than what a daycare would be, but our parents that are doing summer care for their pre-K kids as a part of that grant, we put that in place to provide that service for our pre-K parents, but to also provide in the future an opportunity for our early childhood development high school students to have a place to have an internship in the summer. And the idea is by collecting these fees over the next 5 years while we manage it with the grant, when the grant runs out, we're hopeful that we'll have enough money built up in this account that we can continue this summer program for pre-K kids maybe for another 3 to 5 years before we have to figure out a different way to fund it or cut it. So that's what we're saving those funds for, is to try to sustain it beyond the grant for as long as we can, because we think it's so important for our pre-K parents to have this option, and so important for our high school students taking early childhood development to have an internship opportunity in a real daycare during the summer.
Okay, the next one is an additional $56,893.47 in indirect cost collections, and that's to go ahead and budget what we actually ended up collecting through the end of the fiscal year, and that's what we get to collect from federal programs for managing those funds and housing the federal programs in our facilities. I went ahead and budgeted $28,628 in projected sales and use tax refund is what I'm projecting that we will collect in refunds. We get to collect 2% at the end of every year in sales tax. We don't get all that back, but we do get to fill out a form to collect 2% of that back. And then an additional $15,035 in miscellaneous revenue, and then the rest of those you'll see are those realignments to align our expenses with a chart of accounts. And that's all the budget amendments.
Any questions or comments on those, Ms. Hollingworth?
I don't know. It's not a direct question about the amendments and so forth, but those school uplift grants, have we received that funding yet? Or is that?
Those, we have been awarded those funds. Those funds actually have to be spent, and then we have to request reimbursement, but
Gotcha.
yes. And then I think we have till August 25th or somewhere around in there to spend those funds. And I do know the primary school asked for an extension on theirs and was granted an extension because they weren't going to be able to get the equipment they intended to order and install by the deadline. So I think they're willing to work with us if we're not going to be able to spend those funds by the deadline. Because it was a quick turnaround. We got awarded the funds and they said, you got to spend it by the end of August. So, yes.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion that we approve those recommended budget amendments.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Ms. Crawford, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Ms. Beck, second. All in favor? Thank you. And next we have it is a lot of work.
I do want to point out that I think the $2 that the state allocated us in the school technology fund, I think that allowed Adrian to fix one button on the last broken calculator. And he was very excited.
And it was probably mine, actually. So we, yeah.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
The interim budget resolution.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we need to go ahead and do our interim budget resolution for the 23-24 school year. This allows us to go ahead and continue operations starting Monday morning when we get to July. So I recommend that we go ahead and approve this, and the purpose of it is to pay salaries and the usual and customary expenses for Clay County schools for the period beginning July 1, 2023 until we are able to adopt our official budget resolution for the 23-24 school year.
Is So you heard that recommendation for an interim budget resolution. Is there a motion that we accept that? Mr. Caldwell, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Ms. Crawford, second. All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.
Members of the board, I shared with you through your Google Drive just a document that listed all of the Board of Education meetings for next school year. We will continue with the fourth Monday, except for December because of the Christmas holiday was a little different date. And then June, again, which we pushed the meeting back to as far as we could in that week to give Shelley and the rest of the finance department as much time as possible for fiscal year end to manage all that.
And May, didn't you change the May date?
Yes.
May,
Memorial Day. Yes, that's right. That's correct. But other than that, I just thought we could go ahead and get that approved and get it on the calendar for Mr. Penland and the board and the public moving forward.
So is there a recommendation, Ms. Bailey?
I make a motion we approve that.
Is there a second? Mr. Caldwell, second. All in favor? Thank you. So next we have approval of the consent agenda. You have their board minutes from May the 22nd to 2023 regular session, the June 1st special meeting, and the June 26th special meeting.
I need to add in here, Mr. Chairman, there are actually minutes that I shared. I guess I forgot to add this, but it's June 14th. There were there was one special called meeting that was recessed and reopened twice.
Right.
So I need to add in June 14th. And that was actually all one meeting. It just happened over 3 days. June 14th, June 16th, and June 19th.
And then we have the policies updates from the North Carolina School Board Association that was in your Google Drive, and then the administrative regulations, which was also in your Google Drive, with the exception of the dress and appearance policy, which we discussed earlier, that's been removed. So is there a motion that we approve the consent agenda as it's presented?
I'll make a motion with the addition of June 14th.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second to that?
I'll second it.
Ms. Beck, second. All in favor? Thank you. And I guess our next agenda item is closed session time. But as everyone here tonight knows, this is Mr. Cole's last meeting. And so I did want to just kind of take a minute and offer anybody from the board or anybody that's here the opportunity to speak or say anything if they wanted to. I guess I can start that if you want me to. And I would just like to say thank you. I mean, I appreciate your time here. I appreciate what you've done for the school, setting a bar of leadership, which I think is tremendously evidenced by the results and the data that we're seeing here. I mean, I think your leadership has trickled down to the leadership in each school and the culture that's being created in each school. So I just thank you for that. I thank y'all for that, for buying into his role as the leader as well. That, you know, he's not going to be near as good a leader if he doesn't get buy-in from everybody else. And so you can't lead if nobody's following.
That is correct.
So, and obviously, I think tonight's data is very evident that the schools are following the lead, and changes are not. I thought that statement in Ms. Pleman's presentation was great. That in the midst of change, it's tough. Change is never easy, and so, but once you can begin to see some results of that change, it's nice. And so we've made some changes, and they've not been easy. But it's been enjoyable. And again, I think the data that we've got over the last almost 4 years speaks for itself. So thank you guys, principals, for leading your teams, and you for guiding them in those changes and guiding us through those changes. So.
Dr. Schick, I'd like to add to it. I have seen so much evidence of hard work that has been put into this, and you're data driven. and consistent with making a plan and as I said before, planning your work and working your plan. And it's proven to be efficient and effective. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you. They haven't all worked, but a lot of them have, so we'll be proud of those. Yes, ma'am.
We have a pretty solid foundation from which to move on.
Thank you.
And I will say, I'm going to continue with the leadership thing. I think sometimes we think of leadership as a vertical, and it's really horizontal, you know? It's all about that, and I've seen that, and I've seen you kind of push that out, and regardless of what position you're in, to grow, even as board members. I mean, sometimes you manage up, and I appreciate that. You know, I think that's a level, and that's just good leadership, and I just think you've done just an exceptional job, and Shelley and Angel too, and that level. I mean, I think about the budget, how much we've learned with the budget. And I remember when you came in, you said, I'm not really good with the budget. I've never really managed the district budget, and I feel like you killed it with the help of with your team here. So we appreciate it so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're all right.
Well, I just want to say,
She's not there.
oh, okay. I know how your personality, your sense of humor is. I figured you were going to leave it.
No, echoing what the board said, Mr. Cole, your leadership, thank you. Thank you for the leader you are. Thank you for assisting future leaders. Thank you, principals and administration, central office staff for getting behind Mr. Cole and leading as well. And if I could just summarize what I think is your leadership, competency, and dedication. And I think you're a friendly, good person. And Dr. Shook, I'm not saying Brasstown, I think he's a fine fellow.
Yeah.
but thank you for what you've done for us.
Thank you, everyone. And I just want to say,
Before you, I'm going to keep you on pause for a second here, because I think Mr. Penland wanted to say a few words too.
oh,
I just want to say, I've been here a little bit last week, this week. I've been very impressed with what I've seen. I mean, I should know this, but when you're away from the school, you're not really paying attention to what's going on. I think Mr. Colley's been very helpful this week in educating me on what's going on. And again, I shouldn't be surprised that it's going really, really well, but it is. And I appreciate that. I appreciate his leadership. And I feel he'll do well wherever he goes. And I'm going to miss him here in Clay County. I've got his number though. I'll start calling him. Jobs out of the driveway. But I just want to try to continue on with what you've got going and try to improve where we can. But again, thank you, Mr. Cole, and for a job well done. I appreciate it from where I come.
thank you, Mr. Penland.
I'm going to stand out and clap.
I'm just going to say that you can't do the work that we've done over the last 4 years without a strong team. And so we have outstanding principals, we have outstanding APs, we have outstanding directors, and I think what we've really focused on is building a team atmosphere. What I'm most proud of is that we made all of these necessary changes, which I agree, change is very hard. But we've made all of these changes while at the same time our teacher working conditions survey data has gone from last in the Western region to third in the state. And so a lot of times if you don't manage change well, that working conditions data goes the opposite direction as you implement those changes. And you end up with a lot of people leaving and you have to implement those changes with new people. We've been able to do it while having a 4.3% turnover rate, which was second in the state, behind the Elkin City schools. So again, that speaks to what the principals and the directors are doing at the school level to sell what we're putting together as a leadership team. So it's not just me, it's all of us working together, and really including the teachers and the maintenance staff and just everybody. So it has been my honor and pleasure, and I'm so thankful. This was my first job. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, I will entertain a motion that we go into closed session. Mr. Caldwell.
I'll second it.
Mr. Crawford, second. All in favor? Thank you. Thank you, everyone.